Welcome to the Plant Grow Reap podcast.
So welcome back to Plant Grow Reap. I'm Andrea, CEO of Aintree Group, and today I'm so lucky to be joined by founder of Salty Theatre, theatre performer, wonderful person extraordinaire, Ash Tickell, who we have been friends for a long time, and we've done lots of stuff together that is both seriously financial and also a lot of fun. So today hopefully will be a crossover between we're getting very serious and making sure people know what they need, and we're so silly. We were talking about clappers just before we came on the here, and it was completely above board. So we're going to chat today about financial success for performing artists and performers and dancers and singers and all of that, the gamut of that. You're obviously a performer, theatre person, all of that. You've been in the industry for a long time. You're only like 15, so that's like saying
You're
something.
hilarious. That's very kind.
The industry it's a tough one, and young people come into it and they do all of their theatre training and they know how to sing, like they've been doing their vocal coaching for years and years and years and years. They've done dance since they were 3 or 4, that sort of stuff. And then they come into this industry and they know nothing about what it is to be a professional in this industry. And it's not, and I love this industry and the people in it, but it is not kind.
It is not.
Nobody earns any money doing, unless you're, the
1%.
Yeah, unless you're Kylie Minogue or Nicole Kidman, you're up there and that's, looked after. But even then, these things happen to them too, people like that. It's not just the people who don't have access that get taken advantage of.
That's right. Look, it's like the joys of this industry are so incredible and so paramount, I think, to why we do it and why so many of us are willing to, whether it's take a cut on what our finances look like or what our end of the year salary might look like, because we're so passionate about the work that we do. Sometimes we forget to focus on the future, and it's very much, what is this job opportunity now? Where am I right now? And what does that mean for me? And as you said, I think especially with the younger artists, the fresh grads who are coming out of school, who have been so focused particularly on their training of their craft, there isn't a lot of time spent, if any time spent, during that 3 or 4 years of education that really hones in on the business of you, which includes, finance and contracting and how to plan for your future and the importance of super and all of those things. And I think it's something that oftentimes artists realize too late or quite late in the game that this is a focus that really needs to happen. So then they find themselves playing catch up or not having enough money for rent or really having that like paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, which is not sustainable. The irregular income and the lack of standard employment benefits like sick leave and super or paid holidays are things that are not really properly addressed in this industry. And it's something that I think the industry as a whole is trying to change, and that, the theater network and the union are looking at and really trying to hone in on. But in an industry where kind of the high level performance, the commercial theater in particular, can explore that and look at that and go, okay, we can make this happen. That's one thing. But all of the young people who are trying, and even not just young people who are still like fighting the good fight and want to do new work and new theater development, which I'm super passionate about, they don't necessarily have that in front of them every time that they're going into a contract. So how do they navigate that? What can they do to be able to say yes to those opportunities while still making sure that they're going to support themselves for the future.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's important for us to say these things at the very outset of this podcast, because you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours on this. We are not going to be able to cover anywhere near the things that we need to today. This is just going to be a chat between someone who cares deeply about people who perform and someone who is a performer but also cares deeply about the people in her industry. This podcast is general advice only. Please don't take anything that Ash and I say today as gospel for your circumstances, because everybody's situation in this industry in particular is different. And we do, as a firm at Aintree Group, we do support a lot of performing artists by offering pro bono work for them if they need our assistance and support, by doing regular workshops with financial backing to people who Ash brings to us. Generally, it's Ash's network of people, because she comes across people, and we do those things regularly because we want to make sure that people have as much access to information as they possibly can. So this podcast will skim the surface of some of the very important things. We do have more information that is available on our website, and that will all be included as part of this podcast episode as well. So people will be able to access the information that we may be referring to in this time. But the most important thing for people is to understand that being the affordability of advice and support shouldn't be a barrier to you asking for it. People shouldn't think to themselves, I can't afford to go and see an accountant about this sort of stuff, or a financial advisor, or someone else. There are ways to manage those sorts of situations. There are organisations that actually help on a permanent pro bono basis that use government and charity funding for that. So there is the ability to access it. Don't, if you're in a situation where you're not entirely sure about what your tax deductibility is of things, reach out and ask for help, because in most circumstances there'll be somebody who can answer a 10-minute question or will give you an hour of their time to help you through this. And that's certainly something that we would do. So it's important for me to cover that at the outset. I am not an accountant, and neither is Ash. We're talking about it as, essentially two mums of the industry, even though Grant isn't part of the industry yet, but I'm sure he may be.
Oh, he told me he wants to start.
See? We just want to look after people, and that's why we give this information. So as you said before, Ash, we're talking young people who come out, they haven't had conversations about what their entitlements are with regard to sick leave or superannuation or paid holidays, and they may come out of their university and they may go straight into even community theatre or places where it's profit share and stuff like that. They don't understand what those concepts are. And they don't have any training in it. Then there's no one sitting down with them at uni saying, now, these are the things you might see in a contract as you come along the way. And actually, for the most part, performers are not in a full-time role. Even if they are, they're in a full-time role for a period of time.
That's exactly right.
Contracts are rarely you're here. If you're a teacher at a primary school, you've got a reasonably secure contract over things. But if you are
job security,
job
security is not really a thing in this industry. I think the ultimate goal is to. The dream is to land a national tour or a TV series and to have that opportunity. But more often than not, probably 90% of the time, it's going to be, a couple days on set, or it's going to be a 2-month contract, or it's going to be a part-time independent contract whilst you're juggling a normal, a typical job, a normal job that isn't arts related. So I think with that, it's really about knowing how to manage and grow your income during those periods where you may be fortunate enough to have regular paid work, or how to balance your schedule in order to maintain a sense of kind of financial stability while you're still doing something you're passionate about, while still making sure
Yeah.
that your health and wellness is
Yeah,
in
exactly.
check. You
Yeah.
know, mental
Yeah.
health challenges
Yeah.
in the arts are very real, and
Yeah.
having really strong money habits is something that can help reduce that anxiety and
Yeah.
help really increase your independence.
Yeah, yeah. Because you could be in a situation where you, and I know a few people who have had this happen. They have graduated from their university degree. They have then been fortunate enough to join one of the big tours with one of the big commercial theatre companies, for instance. And those contracts are really attractive. Like you've come out of school, you may be like 21 or 22. It's a national tour and sometimes extended to an international tour. And, you know, you could be part of that company for a year and a half or maybe 2 years. And the contract is a big amount of money because they're not talking about like, well, it's this hourly rate and stuff. So if you go get a barista job, they'll say it's $27 an hour and, you know, you're working these hours and stuff. That's not how a contract comes to you when you are a performer. It comes and it says you're contracted for 52 weeks and this is the, you know, overriding amount. And those things, like when you have never earned anything before, that is a big deal. Like you could be sitting on a contract that may be worth $120,000, but that contract goes for 18 months. And after that contract is done, you then have to go out into the market again and do the same thing and try and access another contract.
That's right. So during that time, then what do you do? I think it can, especially for people who are new to the industry, the first time they have a contract like that, they look at it and they go, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, they're using that money to go out because it's there, and they're using this money to buy this thing or that thing.
Like,
that they've
I
been
can buy that new car.
I can
or
afford
I
it
can
now.
afford that really expensive apartment and stuff. So
that's right. And by the end of the contract, you go, oh, I haven't really saved a penny.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of explore and navigate that kind of thing? And I think one thing, and again, this is just like overriding information, but things that I've found that have been beneficial are creating like little kind of rainy day funds as you go, and you can open, you know, under your same bank, you can have 3 separate accounts. And the amazing thing that you can do now, thanks internet and technology, is literally when your money comes in every week, you have a set amount of money or a set percentage of that weekly income that automatically gets put into your separate account for emergencies, or your travel account, or your, let's say, for a house account. And knowing that money, that percentage is consistently going in, you don't even have to do anything about it. It just is put aside, you don't touch it. Just having kind of simple things that you can set up like that to know hard and fast that money is being saved, or that money is being put towards, you know, stocks or whatever the case may be. That's a bigger conversation, obviously, but really recognizing from the get-go how you can support yourself. So then when that contract does come to an end, you know you have that money there to support you if you're going to go, you know, dive into a barista job for a few months while you're looking for the next gig, and your income is down drastically, you can still afford your rent.
And that's one of the things that we talk a lot about in the workshop as well. The workshops generally go for about 2.5 hours, so we can cover these things in much more detail, even talking about, so Ash, you mentioned that, you know, the different accounts that you can set up, and we sort of talk through those rainy day accounts, like the emergency account when you're on a fixed term contract like that. The emergency account is a completely different account to the what money am I putting away for rent when I'm not on this contract anymore account. So there's a lot of things to think about, and as a young person it's really hard to get your head around those things unless you are accessing information, or unless your family are sitting down with you and saying, hey, you know, these are some sensible things. But, as most 21-year-olds would probably know, we've all been there before. Yeah, whatever, mum and dad, it's fine. That will all work itself out. And then you find, like you said, at the end of a contract where you haven't saved any money and you now might actually be out of a job for a while because you are relying on this crazy cyclical industry where there might not be another show that suits your style for a year or more sometimes. Like we've been really lucky in Australia because we've had a number of big shows come on that have had really long runs, but that is not the norm. Like that is a really unusual outlying sort of circumstance in this country and this the industry here, because as you said, when you first introduced, is that independent theatre in this country is quite small in comparison to perhaps other places in the world that are known as theatre places, so West End and Broadway, where there's always shows,
always something on the go.
Like every 6 weeks, and theatres are rarely empty, so there's always and the marketplace for those shows is bigger. But
and
here,
the support is there because it's been happening for decades in a way that it's still, the foundation here is still being built for that kind of market.
Yeah, and the reality for our young performers is that they could be out of a performing job, a regular performing job, for a long time between contracts, and that's a reality. And I don't love it. Like I, have a great affection for people in this industry, but I also understand that it is hard and jobs do not come easy to this industry. So having the setup financially means that at least when you are maybe feeling really down on yourself because you've been for, 15 auditions and you've not landed a role since that big contract, you at least know that you can pay rent and you don't have to worry about those things. Like you don't want to put yourself in a situation where on top of the stress of having to continually perform and learn new roles for new auditions, because despite what people outside of the industry might think, like you don't have 1 million songs in your repertoire of regularly rehearsed things. So an audition comes up and it will literally say you need to sing like 45 seconds of a song in this style. And it's not something that you can just go, it's not like karaoke. Like again, this is so funny because people that are not in this industry kind of think like, it's just like going and doing karaoke. It's like, okay, no, it isn't.
No, I'm blessed. There have been some people that I've seen audition who go in with that vibe. There's a little bit more work that needs to be done. It's one of those funny things that you're working on your craft constantly as well. Like you have been in a show for a while. You've had access to a vocal coach as part of that show. You've had access to an osteo or a physio or dance captain who is constantly doing dance lessons. You finish that show and all of that responsibility falls back to the individual performer. And those are expensive things to maintain as well. And that's a big thing that artists, I think, sometimes that ends up falling to the wayside, which when you're trying to continuously work on your craft, but you can't afford the dance lessons or the vocal maintenance, then what happens? You feel like you're falling behind. You're behind your colleagues in the industry because you're not able to continually maintain your craft and your artistry.
Yeah, exactly. And, those things are things that, again, it's, this industry is not easy, and not that, most industries aren't easy, but this one is so cyclical that you do need to keep up with, vocal stuff and dance lessons and things in between shows, because your body doesn't maintain that on its own. So you have to be able to do that. So, easy to overlook expenses when you're not actually sitting in front of a list of, possible expenses and what I need those buckets for.
That's right.
And what is part of my contract now that may not be part of the next contract, and I have to think about those things.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Andrea, in that the importance of taking the time to sit down and make that list of like, when I'm out of contract, what are the things I need to maintain my lifestyle, to maintain my vocal health? And it's like, these are the things I need to live, rent, groceries, car insurance, blah, blah, blah. And then these are the things I need to maintain my career, vocal lessons, dance lessons, physio. And what do those look like? And make that list and make those costings and get really clear on what is necessary and what isn't, and break that down. So when you do have work, you know how much money you should be putting away in order to cover those very necessary things when you're on or off contract.
Yeah, exactly. We can go a little deeper into things now. We've had a good chat about how, oh my gosh, this is so awful, and you have to think about all these things. You do have to think about all these things. It's not awful. It's actually one of those things that once you've got a list and you've got an idea of what it should look like,
it's freeing.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I know what I've got to be able to do, and I know what I have to give up as a result of, wherever I am in life at the time. Yeah. Some things that happen not only in theatre contracts or in general performing contracts is you'll get a contract, and your employer, your contract will say that you need to be a contractor. We're not employing you. You're a contractor, and you need to provide an ABN and all of that sort of stuff. And I don't want to go into the super details because it is actually really detailed, and we've got to look at the contract to see, because there's various elements of what makes a contractor and doesn't.
That's right.
But generally speaking, it's for young performers, particularly if you're coming out of contract and you're going into, for instance, a dance school or some form of small business in that way, they will often say to you, oh no, you'll be a contractor. And we've talked about this in this workshop that we do, and it doesn't ever cease to amaze me how many young people are working as contractors for performing arts schools and things like that, and they're not supposed to be. So,
that's right.
This is one of those things where it's a red flag to anyone, and especially if you go in to get your tax done and all of a sudden your accountant says, actually, you're not a contractor, because it has huge implications for people.
That's exactly right. And because ultimately with contracting, that will look very different in terms of annual leave and sick leave, and so many people also, if you are a contractor, think, oh, that means I don't get super, which is not necessarily the case.
Yeah, so that's one thing that, if you're listening to this podcast and you are on a contractor rate with a small business and you want to have a chat about that, then please be in touch, because there is actually a really easy ATO calculator that you can do that says, does this apply? Does that apply? Am I able to do this? Am I able to do that? And the calculator on the ATO website will say, you're an employee, not a contractor.
That's right.
So there's no grey area really in this. The ATO have been really clear with small businesses in particular, to say that if you are doing contracting and you are not a real contractor, then they will come down hard on it. So if you are a small business person who is doing this as well, you really need to do something about it, because it can have really serious implications. So it's something that needs to be worked out really quickly. And the same thing happens with theatre contracts as well, doesn't it? Because sometimes, and because you're only on a short-term thing and that sort of stuff, it does look like it's a little bit muddy, because if it's only a 6-week contract, or if it's only a 2-week contract, for instance, the same rules apply, in terms of whether you're an employee of the organisation or whether you are a contractor. So that is one where we can certainly help you with more specific information if people have questions around that. It's one of those ones where it's pretty easy to manage. Not that it's easy to manage the conversations that you may have to have around those contracts, but
those are fun conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
What was it? A friend of ours from back in the day said something to my husband along the lines of, with money talk, you got to make it weird. You can't have those conversations without making it weird. If you do, that opens up, you have the hard talks, and people are always willing to have them. Employees, I think, are very willing to have those conversations. And 9 times out of 10, the gray area gets cleared, and it's a win on both sides.
And I think realizing that your value, like you've got to actually put some value on what you do and who you are. So you might be a young person, you might be coming out of a theatre contract, and you might need that job, but that doesn't mean devaluing yourself to the point where you are not covering your annual leave or sick leave or superannuation and things, because you have to be able to build your own wealth and your own well-being.
Right. So. And I think that's such a good point, because there are so many artists in this industry who will kind of jump onto anything and say, I'll just take whatever. Like, that's not exactly ideal financially, but I'm just going to dive in, and I'm not going to ask any questions because I don't want them to not pick me because of that. Yeah. That's like not a great way to go into an employment opportunity, because if you're jumping in and you're already not feeling safe to have those hard conversations, that might not be the right gig for you. Or you need to, whether it's reevaluate the employer or just reevaluate the way you approach yourself and your value of yourself. Something needs to change. So, and I think just recognizing, like you said, recognizing your value in an industry where it's so easy to kind of be hard on yourself and compare yourself and worry about where the next job is coming from. I think being able to bring up a financial conversation or those hard topics, if you're able to do that at a young age from the beginning, your career is only going to be more supportive as you move forward. And there's a lot of respect in that. Like producers respect the artists who are able to have those conversations and go, no, like I know what I'm worth. And sometimes there might not be room to budge with like the weekly pay. Yeah. But if you have a question about something that seems wrong or unclear, ask that question. If the person is being shady on the other side, then you probably shouldn't be working with them anyway. So you should be able to have those hard talks and really recognize the value of the work that you do and what you offer. If you're being offered a job, it's because that person wants to work with you. Yeah.
I think good segue into talking about young people and having representation in this industry, because a lot of people self-represent, and that's totally fine. But you do need to be able to have those honest conversations with employers. But having a manager, like not all managers are created equal across all industries. This is not just a performing arts sort of situation, but all managers are not created equal. And it's really important for you to find a management organisation that aligns with your values and what you're trying to achieve as a person as well. So tell me, you've had managers, you've worked with managers, you've been on both sides of the equation with that. What are some of the really good management relationships that you have seen over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best ones are the managers that you literally feel like you can pick up the phone at any time, day or night, and go, hey, this is troubling me. Let's have a chat. Yep. You can have a laugh with them, but you can also have the hard talks with them. I think the managers who have a really clear idea of your vision and your career path, and that they work with you and they walk beside you on that path to help you not only get the work and like get into the room, but recognize the importance of what happens when you're not working. So the managers that are really the ones you want to look at are the ones that are still in conversation with you during your off time, during your off season, who are saying, okay, let's work together to kind of better this aspect of your craft. Or when you're not in contract, what can I do to support you, and to take the time to really like go through a contract with you and help you understand, especially when you're new, help you understand like, what do these clauses mean?
Yeah.
What are these tax implications? What do you need? So when this contract ends, you have a little bit of a slush fund put aside. And I think the agents, the managers who are open to having those conversations and who pick up the phone and who answer the emails, those are the ones that you want to talk to, that you feel safe with.
Yeah.
If you're picking up the phone and you're feeling like stressed about calling your manager, or you're feeling like embarrassed or unsure, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be confident that they have your back every step of the way, both professionally and really kind of personally too, because it's a tough industry. So if you're having mental health issues at any point, or anxiety, that needs to be able to be something that you can talk to them about as well, because your career, your personal life, and the life that you live outside of your work impacts this work as well. And they want to make sure, like, managers, as much as it's for the industry, they should be very holistic. I think the ones that you really want to hone in on. There's a holistic relationship that's happening.
Yeah. I think that it's really important that people understand that that having a manager who is managing you as a brand and as a person, that's not just something that you go, oh yeah, it doesn't really matter who the manager is. I'm going to get in those rooms anyway, and I'm going to be, doing what I need to do. There's got to be an alignment there. So
Absolutely.
for young performers getting into the industry, or even older performers who have been out and are looking for a new agent, it's really important to not, like, you want to get personal referrals from people about who they've worked with and who they've had a good experience with on both sides of the equation as well. Like, don't just talk to performers who have managers, talk to casting agents and stuff about the managers that they like to work with.
That's
because there's a lot of management organizations who will just like throw CVs out into the wind and hope that they sit somewhere.
That's right.
And then there's people who develop relationships with casting agents, and the casting agents come to them and say, hey, I'm looking for this person, who can you send me? So
that's right.
They're
And
not
it's
all
so
created
clear.
equal.
They're not.
Yeah.
And it has been really really great to see over the years in the casting that I've been doing for some of my shows and some shows as a freelance producer. Just there are agents out there who are incredible. They're amazing. And right away, that they're like vying for their artists, that they care about their artist, not just as like a money-making machine, but as a person in the world. And they stand out. And those are the artists who oftentimes are working because they have that extra support. Or if they're new, their agent has their back 110%, and they're going, I don't care if this is your first contract or your 51st contract, I'm going to give you the same amount of support and attention, no matter where you are in your career, because I care about you and your future.
Yeah. If you could, because you see people who are coming in self-represented, and you see people who do have managers. If someone doesn't have a manager, because again, it's not something, you can't just go out and employ a manager. You have to go through a process to be chosen by the management company. Therefore, we end up with some management companies who actually just have 1,000 people on their books, and they don't really care, because whatever, something will hit eventually. If you're going to self-represent and you're going for an audition or things like that, are there things that the person who's self-representing should be able to have prepared ready for those casting situations? Because as a manager, someone is clearly sending through, not just here's a link to the person's whatever, Star Now or whatever it happens to be. There's obviously something. So what can I do if I'm walking in as a self-represented person and, I'm going up to the casting table and I'm dropping whatever it happens to be, my big picture, glossy picture and stuff.
Absolutely.
What are you looking for when you're casting something?
Yeah, I think obviously it's really important to have a really clean CV and professional headshot. Those are like key items that indicate the work that you've done, the training that you've done. So we know that you're a real person in the world, especially if you're new, having a couple referees can be helpful. Beyond that, it's important if you can, put the money aside to have a showcast account, a casting network account. There are a number of other platforms that casting directors utilize in order to find talent, and that oftentimes there will be projects that are posted on these that you don't necessarily have to have an agent to get in, and there are open calls. There's also a couple platforms that, like Crossroads Live has their own platform. There's a platform, what is it? Casting.com. Might not be that. I'll sing it and then I'll remember it. I can find out. But there's one also, and we can link to it later when I just double check.
Yeah, we will put the links.
But there's one that Michael Castle Group and Disney uses as well, that you can create your own what is it called? Profile. Thank you. Jet lag brain. You can create your own profile to get that out there. So having those kind of platforms situated is really important. Putting together a reel of the work that you've done is super helpful as well. And that's not like the one thing, like a pro tip. When you're putting together a reel, don't add like an Instagram video of you singing in a bar. That is not going to help you get work. If you're like Whitney Houston and you put that on, maybe it'll get you in the room. But typically you want to have those clean, professional self-tapes. So getting a self-tape set up as well. Like you can go online and buy cheap ring lights and like backdrops that you can set up to make sure you have, and there's great tutorials online, even just on YouTube, like how to set up for a self-tape properly. So having those kind of tools at your disposal is going to help you get in the room that much further, because you're coming in looking really, really professional from the get-go.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think, again, it's one of those things where we don't necessarily talk enough about the fact that there's a lot of preparation involved as well.
So
like we just said, that you can't just go in and sing a karaoke number as an audition.
Like I've had people submit tapes that are, from little gigs that they've done that like that's their audition for a particular show. Like, if you're auditioning for this show, send me a tape that will represent you for this show. I don't want to see you singing in a bar. You've got a great voice, but that shows me that you didn't care enough to take the time to put together a tape. And if you don't have time, let me know. That's okay. I get it. Sometimes life is chaotic. But send me something that still best represents you, maybe from a previous audition, and say, can you use this for now? And it's still clean cut and not you singing at a bar.
And, going back to the needing to have like a buffer of emergency fund built up and stuff like that, so that you're, protecting the time that you need to spend on all of this. You could have situations where you've got 15 auditions in a week and you've got to send a different self-tape for every single one of those, and you've got to have time to be able to do those. So, when you're working out what my needs are while I am not in contract, you've got to also talk about what your time frame needs are as well, because if you're going to go out and get a barista job or something, if you're qualified in another area and that becomes your job while you're in between contracts, that time is going to have to be spent as well, because we're not just talking about having to save money so that you can live. It's all about you are a business. You yourself are a business, so you have to put time into the preparation for that business.
And you might have to take, a day off or 2 days off from the barista job so you can get the auditions out there, and then you have time to go to the second round because you're going to be spending a day in the rehearsal space all day. You need to be prepared for that. And that also means, sometimes that means you have to find a job that is flexible enough that will allow you to do that. And that can be a challenge in and of itself.
It absolutely can. And those things, like if you're working a day job, it's really hard to then say to your employer, like, I need tomorrow afternoon off because I've got an audition for a show.
Yeah.
So again, it's all about, you know, when you do those sorts of things, you've got to have those conversations up front and be a grown up about it, because actually what you're doing is a job between jobs. It's not, and this is hard too, because the rest of the world thinks that people who are performers just do it for a bit of fun on the side, which is kind of why we don't take it as seriously as we should. It's like for most people, their work that they do regularly is the on the side. And it's what they do to have to pay rent and make sure that they can continue to ply their craft.
That's right.
It's not a hobby. Like people aren't doing theatre as a hobby. Some people will do it in community theatre, which works a completely different way and has rehearsals in times that are, you know, much easier to balance. But professional theatre happens during the day. Like you might be in a show at night. Like we might go sit in the theatre at 7:30 and watch a show at night, but the people who have been in that theatre or who are in that show arrive in the day and spend more than 7.5 hours in the theatre, and it's a full-time job.
It is.
So really important for our listeners to understand that as well, because it's not something that they do as a side gig. It is their gig, and the side gig is the barista job or the, you know, admin job that they do, or the school teacher that they are during the day and stuff like that. So, you know, when you are a theatre performer, it's really important for you to make it who you are as a job. Like, I am not a theatre performer as something that I do on the side. I'm a theatre performer.
And that's kind of a mindset thing
It is,
too, isn't it? Like when you're when you're filling out just that thing of going, you're filling out an application form and for whatever, and it's like, the question is occupation. Exactly. Occupation. Like, what do you put? And maybe I'm working, you know, more hours as a teacher or more hours in admin. But what do I write down? Like, write down you're a performer. That is your job. And it's a mindset thing too.
Absolutely.
And recognizing yourself as that is going to help you navigate all of the other steps that need to happen to really hone in.
Take it seriously. Like, if you take that job seriously, you will take all of the other elements that we're talking about here seriously too. And you will understand the value of the things that we're talking about in terms of, you know, preparation for the future, because people who have what the rest of society term a normal job are doing those things. Like, they're sitting down and they're thinking about what their mortgage might look like and what their retirement might look like and all of that sort of stuff. So if performer is your chosen occupation, then own it and be a performer. It doesn't mean that you can only be a performer, because that never matters. Like, it's that even if you have a normal job, that's not important. But if that's what you are and who you want to create your persona around, then own it and be it. And it's also totally fine if that's not what you want to do. But if you do want to do it, then don't write down occupation barista and think that, well, you know, that's where I get my regular money from. It doesn't matter where you get your regular money from.
Where are you putting in your energy? Where is your time and energy going into the most? Like, what do you want your future to be? So if your future is that I want to be a performer, then you have to be able to put the things in place that will allow you to be a performer.
That's
right. That will support
that will support that. And that's really important, because the next section that we will talk about a little bit, we will never get through all of this because it's big, is aspiration. Because most people can't be performers for their entire life, particularly if you are something like a very physical dancer or you do, you're an action stunt double or something like that. There's a limited time frame over what you get to do, because your body will actually just physically not hold out long enough. I mean, we see young dancers who have been dancers at an elite level since they were quite young. They get to sort of 25 to 30 and their bodies are wrecked, and it takes a toll. So you have to be able to prepare for those things as well. So, a little bit extra. But, if your goal is that one day, you might be a professional ballerina now and that has a time frame of whatever, it's pretty tenuous because you don't really get a say in whether your knee gives out when you're in the middle of performance. But what are those goals going forward and where would you like to be in the future? In the same way as anybody with a normal job would be doing those things. Like at what point am I going to be able to buy a car? At what point am I going to be able to buy a house? Am I going to rent for my whole life? Because that's the choices that I make and things. So really important to have those things at least, in your mind, whether they're written down and part of your, financial wellness plan going forward, but to think about those things and understand that, how am I going to manage going forward if these things happen to me? And one thing that we talk a little bit about in those conversations is insurances, because as a young person, you typically don't think to yourself that I need to worry about insurances. I'm young, I'll be able to sort those things out. But, is your health insurance going to cover you if you have a major injury that needs immediate surgery? Like if it's a knee reconstruction that you need or something like that, are you going to have to go onto the public health waiting list because that's going to have an impact on your ability to earn? So, you want to think about those sorts of things in advance. So, income protection insurance if you are not able to work for a certain period of time because of those things, and making sure that you budget for those things because they can be really positive parts of your life if you make decisions right.
That's right.
So the things, the small things that you can do to invest in what the future might look like when you eventually can't do your craft anymore because your body physically or mentally can't cope with those things.
Or even something as simple as I've been a performer up until I'm 35 and now I want to have a baby. Like even that, what does that mean? Like you've got your maternity leave for a period of time, but then there's going to be a gap when you're not, focusing on that aspect of your career. Is it going to be easy to get work when you go back into the field or is it not? And how can you navigate that? And what does that mean? What are the implications?
Yeah, exactly. And they're the sorts of conversations that you should be having with someone about your financial future. Again, a lot of people who are performing artists do not have the spare cash to be able to access paid advice in those situations, but there are a lot of organisations that offer, financial wellness courses and conversations with people on a pro bono basis, and the industry has access to those conversations as well. It's not a magic thing, just talk to each other about it. And it may be that you get together as a group, as we've said, Ash has brought together people to come into workshops at Aintree Group, and we've sometimes had 20 people in a room who have all then gotten a huge amount of information and support, not necessarily from an individual basis, but as I said, we will always answer questions individually. You might not be able to afford to go and sit for an hour with a financial advisor, but if you can access a workshop like that, you can bring your questions to those workshops and understand, what situations may. And in those particular workshops that we've had, people have asked questions like, I've been paid as a contractor for the last sort of 2 years with this place and whatever, and we've just turned around and said to them, well, that has to stop tomorrow. And they've been like really shocked and gone, oh, wow, I had no idea. So really important that you come, if you have access to a workshop like this, just come along to it and invest the time in spending it with a group of your peers.
That's
who,
right.
have these questions.
And you'd be surprised at the questions that come up too. And sometimes it takes someone else asking it in the room for you to realize, oh, that's actually something I haven't thought about. How now can I implement that in my own kind of lifestyle or my future planning?
Yeah, I remember the last workshop we had, someone asked a question, the whole room was like, I've been thinking about that myself. And so, so the good part about one of the best parts about this industry is it is very community based. So, performers talk to each other. Managers will have, times when they bring all of their teams in together and have the ability to chat. So, access those things. Don't sit back and say, oh, I don't have any money to invest, so I'm not going to go talk, or I'm not currently employed, so I can't access that information because it doesn't really apply to me right now. But,
that's right. And if you're thinking about it, that means you're not the only one. There's someone else out there who's having the same thoughts and the same questions. So kind of take the time to find it.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like the industry is not unique. Yes, there are unique people in the industry, but the problems are across the board. Like people don't understand the legalese in contracts. So don't be afraid to ask the question.
There are no stupid questions.
Yeah. Like if you don't understand a contract, then ask a question. If you get a contract in and you are reading it and something looks not right to you, then go back to your manager and say, what is this part about, and how can we fix it? And if you don't have access to a manager, then go back to the company that's giving you the contract and say, can you please explain what this thing means? And don't be scared to do that.
Don't be scared. You can always ask clarifying questions, and they will reply. They'll clarify. And important to understand that there's ways to ask those questions that don't seem adversarial. Like if you're going to send an email to someone who's offering you a contract, don't go straight back to them and say, hey, you're offering me a contract as a contractor and that's just not right and stuff like that. Go back to them and say, hey, I've been reading up on the ATO rules and it says this and this and this about contractors, and I don't think that situation applies to me. Can you explain how that might apply to me? And get them to come back to you with an answer. Exactly.
And I think also just understand that, yes, you may sometimes make decisions like, I will become a contractor because I need the money right now. And that's no reflection on you. Like if it means the difference between you being able to pay your rent and not paying your rent, then sometimes we have to do those things. Actually understand in that situation, you're not going to be the one who gets in trouble from the ATO. It'll be the employer, not you. So you don't own, the onus isn't on you with regard to that. So, look after yourself in that respect. If you think that the job relies on that, then, don't go making silly decisions about things. You don't need to be the one who makes those decisions, because paying your rent is super important.
It's so important. And it is taking the time to kind of recognize sometimes you need to say yes for financial reasons. Yep. Sometimes you might be in a position where you've got enough in your reserves to say, hey, I'm going to do this like little development for an honorarium because I think it'll be, filling my creative cup, or I think it'll look good on my resume and kind of fill a gap in the meantime and keep me, little things like that too. I will say, whilst they might not always be financially lucrative and it's just an honorarium, it is a good way to, maybe you're getting paid a small amount or you're kind of doing a profit share, but in those circumstances, you're working on your craft. So it's like a way to, have singing lessons and dance lessons without paying for them. So that's sometimes a way that you might balance out the justification to say yes to an indie project. And be able to balance that in the evenings while you're doing, your muggle job during the day. And it's kind of navigating at those points in your life when you can and want to say yes to those things, and when you want to say, actually, no, like I need a job that's going to pay me weekly and it's going to pay me super. And that is what I need right now.
Yeah. And by building the store of cash sometimes, like by putting that money aside for the rainy day or for the emergency or for the period where you're not, fully employed in your craft, you will set yourself up to be able to make those choices differently. Right. So you won't be taking a job because you're desperate for the job. You'll be taking it because you can say, listen, I'm going to get to work with someone really great in this, someone who I may not always have access to, or I get to travel to somewhere that I may not be able to travel to, or there's some other benefit to it, and weigh the benefit with the amount of money that you're going to get paid for it. Because setting yourself up well in that respect is going to allow you to make those decisions in a better way and a more informed way without then having to become desperate about what you say yes to.
Yeah, that's right. And in terms of like the putting money away, that's not like, also recognize it's not just when you have like the big contract that you do that. It's also when, you know, you're working a part-time job that you just put away a smaller percentage.
Yeah.
You know, you can always be putting away that rainy day fund or that emergency fund.
Yeah.
The amount will just change based on what your income is at any given time. But you always know there's something.
Exactly. And there are online resources that you can access that will help you work on those things. Accountants call those sorts of things income averaging. So you know that you've got this much money over that 6 months, but if you then extrapolate it out over 12 months, it means you've got this much.
Yeah.
So you know what that looks like going forward. So you're not saying to yourself, okay, for this 6-month contract, I'm going to be able to stock away this much money. And then all of a sudden, actually, I've now got a quarter of what I had during that. And so it's about working it out, not just in blocks of when you've got the money, but by averaging it out over what your year looks like so that you can balance the expenses. Like, I know that I'm going to be able to pay my rent now, but in 3 months' time, I need to be able to pay my rent as well. So what does that look like? So we don't just go, oh, there's an income and then there's a trough and then there's an income. Like you've got to be more sensible about it when you are in a situation where you've got clumps of income coming in. And that's not something that they teach you in school.
They should.
Yeah, like they're not doing any financial wellness stuff in school.
No.
For
Have you guys thought about talking to some of the unis and figuring out a way to get in?
It's on our list of things to do, actually. So I think it's one step at a time. We get them in to talk to them face to face first, and then we'll go into the bigger places. But unis, feel free to contact us as part of this podcast.
Let's change the curriculum up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I think across the board we need to do that though. Like that's not just a performing artist thing to do. Nope. Thank you so much for coming in today, Ash. We could do an entire podcast series about this.
Seriously.
So we will have Ash back on. We will be advertising our Artist Guide to Financial Success workshops again in 2026. So if you're really interested in this information, or if you have a performer in your life who you think could benefit from this sort of stuff, then please feel free to reach out to us and reach out to Ash. She's really readily available on Salty Theatre and all the social media platforms. Go hang out with her on a Friday night at Broadway Bar or something like that when you get to actually sing karaoke.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for coming in. We will continue this conversation, Ash, because there's so many things we could talk about, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you for all of your support for this industry.
It's a pleasure.
Podcast.